Hello, everyone. Thank you, everyone that participates in putting this meeting on, and thank you to Greg for introducing me, and thank you, Alice, for asking me. My name is Matthew Hydock. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm from Buffalo, New York. I have a sponsor. My sponsor knows that he's my sponsor. Um, I sponsor a bunch of men in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have the privilege to do that. I have a home group. We're Soul Purpose Group, SOUL, Soul Purpose Group. We meet on Thursday nights live here in Buffalo, New York. If you're ever in Buffalo, please look us up. We'd love to have you. We're a big book based meeting. We read something out of the first 181 pages of the big book, and then we discuss that as our topic at our meeting, and we try to stay focused on the topic. Full disclosure, last night I was doing my nightly inventory, and the fear question was asked, and I'm afraid to speak here. I really truly am. A lot of my um people that I look up to, that I respect, that I love, have spoken at this meeting, and how does a drunk like me end up um talking on a platform that a lot of people that I look up to and love and adore have spoken on? Um, but here I am, and I love Alice. She's always encouraging me to do stuff like this, and she texted me and said, "Hey, Peter M was supposed to do it this Tuesday, but he's at the international. He's going to still be there. Can you fill in?" And guys, Peter M was one of the guys that I listened to nonstop in my ear all the time in early sobriety. Peter, Chris, Myers, those guys were just in my head all the time. So I'm like, yeah, I can, but how do I stand in those shoes? You know what I mean? But here I am. Alice asked me to pick a reading, and it was off page 88, and it said, "We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined." And I know when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought I knew what words meant, and my early sponsor had encouraged me to look up words to really find out. Because when I hear discipline, that's my father when he's drunk. He's coming into the house, he's lining us up with our pants at our ankles, and he's whooping our butt for whatever it was that he was mad about that day. That's discipline, right? But I was encouraged to get a 1935 dictionary and actually look up the words and find out what they mean. So in my big book, I have discipline. The first one is teaching or instruction. The second one is that what is taught to a pupil. And I love this third one. It is teaching which corrects, molds, strengthens, and perfects. And I think if we look at this, that we're undisciplined, right? But we'll let God teach us, mold us, strengthen us, and perfect us through this step 11. I think that that's what this really is. And I have three stages of my Alcoholics Anonymous, we'll call it. The stage where I was 19 years old, and I came to some AA meetings, and I plunked down in the middle of the road, middle of the road, middle of the road Alcoholics Anonymous, where no one was talking about the solution that we have, or at least the people that I was around weren't mentioning the steps or God or anything like that. And I'd come in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, a few meetings here, a few meetings there for a long period of time, and never got sober. And then at the end of the last debacle, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and ended up finding a guy named Rob that was properly armed with facts about himself, that knew the big book inside and out, and started taking me through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous at a rather rapid clip. And I don't know, probably 3-4 months sober, I had said to Rob, "Man, I really want to learn about this prayer and meditation." And Rob said to me, "I really suck with prayer and meditation. Perhaps it's time you find somebody else to help you, because I don't want to do you a disservice." And at first I was like, "Man, that sucks. Like, I've given this guy all of my fifth step. Like, he knows every detail about me. I want to continue this journey." But I honor that man today, because he didn't lie to me. He didn't make up some crud about what he thought he could impart into me without any experience, you know. And I found another man, and that man started me back at step one and took me through the steps again, and we never really got to step 10 and 11, and that was the first 3 years of my sobriety. And I'll tell you guys that 3 years sober, I would often walk out to my garage, and mind you, I made a lot of amends, and I was already trying to help other people, right? But there was this gap of no 10 and 11 in my life. It was just not there. And I would walk out to my garage and I would look up to the rafters and I would wonder if I could tie the perfect noose because I couldn't do life like this anymore. And Dr. Silkworth talks about restless, irritable, discontented. And I just tell you guys that at 3 years sober, I was restless, irritable, discontented. My girlfriend at the time, who is now currently my wife, um, was worried about me. And there was this men's retreat I was supposed to go to, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going. Screw those guys, screw AA. This sucks. Life sucks. AA sucks. Like I didn't want anything to do with it. And I didn't know that I was missing the actual juice in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know that there was more to this. It was almost in my life as if step 10 and 11 had an asterisk next to them and they were extra credit. And there's an article, and I think um it's called Take Step 11, and it's out of the Language of the Heart book, and it's become one of my favorite kind of step 11 things, and I suggest it to a lot of people. And Bill Wilson writes, this is in the middle of the article. He said 12 stepping, talking at meetings, reciting our drinking histories, confessing our defects, and what progress we have made with them no longer provided the release and abundant life. Our lack of growth is often revealed by an unexpected calamity or a big emotional upset. Perhaps we hit a financial jackpot and are surprised that it solves nothing, that we are still bored, miserable, notwithstanding. And I really think that that's restless, irritable, and discontented again, right? I went through the world, I made a ton of amends, and I got some release or some relief, right? I got some relief from what ailed me. I was on better footing. I had made amends with my ex-wife. I was seeing my kids again. I met this woman that was amazing in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had a bunch of friends, right? But there was still a piece of me that was missing. And I didn't know what it was. Later on in this, and I'm only going to read a little bit. I'm not trying to be a teacher here or a classroom, but this really speaks to it, right? As we usually don't get drunk on these occasions, our bright-eyed friends tell us how well we're doing, but inside we know better. We know we aren't doing well enough. We still can't handle life as life is. There must be a serious flaw somewhere in our spiritual practice and development. What then is it? And this is Bill Wilson saying, the chances are better than even that we shall locate our trouble in our misunderstanding and neglect of AA Step 11. Prayer and meditation and guidance from God, the other steps can keep most of us sober and somehow functioning, but step 11 can keep us growing if we try hard and work at it continually. Discipline, right? Teaching and perfecting, right? Learning from God what it's like. And that's what I think I'm here to talk about today is the third phase of Alcoholics Anonymous for Matthew Hydock. This I go to this retreat reluctantly, and I know I felt like Liz was almost begging me with her soul to go to this retreat because she knew I was in a bad place at 3 years sober. And I go to this retreat and I break down in front of 65 or 70 men. I was just a broken guy that really didn't want to live anymore. And I had 3 years of sobriety behind me. And I ask a man to help me, and he takes me through the first 9 steps again. And then he encourages me to call 5 men in Alcoholics Anonymous that have a step 10 and 11 life that I know about, and ask them what they're doing as a daily practice. And guys, I know I'm here to talk about step 11, but I don't think step 10 and 11 have a just disjointedness. I think they're joined at the hip. I think we start with step 11 in the morning. We roll into step 10, and then step 11 is almost our safety net at the end of the day to catch whatever step 10 didn't catch for us, and even in step 10 or step 11, it tells us to pause when agitated or doubtful, which is really my direction to turn back into step 10. So I'm going to talk about both of them, and I hope I'm not offending any step 11 purists or whatever, but I just think that they work in concert together, and that's how I stay spiritually fit, right? um and I go through this, and this guy Alex encourages me to reach out to these men and ask them what they're doing with step 10 and 11. And there's this man, and he takes the time and he talks to me about his step 10 and 11 in life. And he was a guy that I had met at a retreat in Oklahoma, and it was an amazing talk. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing next Tuesday at 6 o'clock?" I said, "Probably driving home from work again." He, "Well, why don't you call me next week?" And we talked for another hour the following week. And what are you doing next week? And driving home, he goes, "Why don't you call me?" And about 5 weeks in, I called my buddy Alex. I said, "You knew that I would find a man that would be able to work through steps 10 and 11 with me and get me into this fold, didn't you?" And I said, "I'm going to ask this gentleman to sponsor me." And he said, "I think that's a fantastic idea." And that relationship with that sponsor lasted for 5 or 6 years, and it was a defining moment in my recovery. It was a defining moment in my spiritual growth. It changed me. Ali, I forgot to start a timer, so you're going to give me that 5 minute warning. Just please don't forget. All right. Um, it changed me on a cellular level. It changed the man that I was at the time, and it changed the man that I wanted to be. Because I now live my life truly believing that the 12 steps are designed to make us into the people that God intended us to be from the beginning. And that this growth that I can have in step 10 and 11, this continued review of my life, this continued turning to God and bringing my defects of character, however grave they are, to God in step 11 throughout the day, and then really reviewing that at night and looking at it, and really catching these areas of self that re-arise. These things um, changed me on a cellular level. I was driving yesterday, and this is a 10 step kind of story, right? But I was driving, and I always haven't been a gentleman in traffic. I just haven't been. My wife can attest to that. People that have been on the road with me can attest to that. But I work for U-Haul, and we're out recovering a truck that had been missing, and I take one of the girls from the office, and we go to recover this truck, and we're driving down this busy road, and someone cuts out, not immediately in front of me where I had to step on the brakes, right? But enough to aggravate the average Joe. And the girl that's 24-year-old girl that's in the vehicle with me that I grabbed to go recover this truck says, "Oh my God, why don't you beep the horn? Why don't you?" And I had a moment of like, holy crap, this stuff actually works. Like, like in years past, I would have not only beeped the horn and thrown my hands out the window, I probably would have swerved around him, locked up the brakes, and got out of the car to drag the dude out of the vehicle. But it was that moment of like, God is really changing me, right? I think it's Carl Jung that's talking to Roland Hazard, and he talks about what their phenomenon to me, right? They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements, ideas, attitudes, and emotions which were once the driving forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a whole new set of motives and conceptions begins to dominate them. And it's in moments like that I see God's power in my life. Because on my own accord, on my own will, I'm just a guy that's going to pull up next to you and probably end up in jail because I yoked you out of your car and beat the crap out of you because you cut me off in traffic. But with an active step 10 and 11 life, with really truly doing a nightly review. And my sponsor is this guy, and he's 38 or 39 years sober, and he sponsors an unfathomable amount of men, and he's a preacher, and he's a husband, and he's a father, and he's a grandfather, and he's an insurance guy, and he's an author now, and he sends me his nightly inventory without fail every single night. And his nightly inventory, it's one of those things where you're like, oh, oh my God. Like he just writes and writes, and none of it's fluff, right? He's really reviewing his interactions with other human beings during the day, and where did he show up spiritually, and where did he have faults, right? And when I first started working with this man, I would read him and I'd be like, I can't live up to that. But I'll tell you guys, I look forward to my nightly review. I look forward to seeing what corrective measures I can take for tomorrow. I look forward to how I can be a better husband, how I can be a better father, how I can be a better coworker, how I can be better in AA. What in my day? And it's not to beat myself up. It's where can I grow closer to God? Where can I deepen this connection with God? Where can I truly become the man that God intended to me to be? What mistakes did I make today based on self that I need to look at, that I need to inventory? And I sponsor a little handful of guys, and I send them my inventory every night. And I feel like my inventory pales in comparison to Harold's inventory, but I do it. And do I miss it sometimes? You bet. I bet out of 365 days, I might only do 350 inventories. But I don't beat myself up for that either. I get back on the horse the next day and I do it again tomorrow. And then when I wake up in the morning, guys, it's never perfect. I'm not a perfect spiritual giant. I don't claim to float off of a pillow. And this is my daughter's old bedroom, but it's my meditation room now, right? This is where I come and I get quiet in the morning. I have spiritual books abound, and this is my little sanctuary. And this is where I feel the presence of God most in my day is in my little space right here in this 20-year-old chair. Just me and some kind of meditative state, right? I think that a misnomer that a lot of people have, that I had coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, was that prayer and meditation, I suck at meditation. That's my automatic default, right? Why? Because I can't quiet my mind and clear all the thoughts, and I can't meditate like that. And although that is a form of meditation, and I'm not bashing anybody if that's what you do for your morning quiet time. I think this is a very personal relationship that we build with God, that we find our own way through it, right? And the only wrong way to meditate is not to meditate. For me, it was when someone explained to me that, hey, grab your 1935 dictionary and look up the word meditate. And if I look up the word meditate in a 1935 dictionary, or probably any dictionary, I don't know. I just go back to when Alcoholics Anonymous kind of started, where we got our bones, so I could see the words as they meant when Bill put them in our book, right? When we get through the morning review section of our 11th step, right, it says we usually conclude this period of meditation. Well, wait a minute. In those pages prior, it didn't tell me to sit quietly like a ninja and do this and float off of my pillow. It didn't have any of that. As a matter of fact, it had me considering my plans for the day. It had me asking God to enter my heart and be with me through the day. It had me looking for areas where I might see self coming at me and ask God to help me make the decisions, right? So if I look up the word meditate in a 1935 dictionary, and this might be a short definition, or it might be not exactly what it says in there, but it says to thoughtfully contemplate, right? So I think, and this is how I go into step 11, and this is my step 11 practice, and it doesn't have to be yours. Have your own. Build your own. Do your own thing. Find a meditation that works for you. Again, the only wrong way to meditate is not to do it. And if you say I suck at meditation, then I just say you haven't tried enough. You haven't explored. You haven't gone on YouTube and said guided meditation. Oh, I can't stand that voice, and looked for another one and looked for another one and looked for another one until you found your jam. Because that's what I had to do, right? I remember I would get on, I'd be like, this guy's voice is annoying, and I can't even think straight because this guy's voice is, and my sponsor told me just stop and look for another one and look for another one until you find what works for you. And guys, I'm telling you, for the first 6 months of doing this, I listened to the same woman. I could tell you the rhythm. I could tell you she must have been in New York City or something, because I would hear a fire engine rip by her window in the meditation, but it was okay because I knew it was coming. And I listened to that same meditation for 6 months because it worked for me until it didn't anymore. And I found something different, right? So this 11 step morning meditation, I look at it like this. I sit down. Sometimes I have a notepad, sometimes I don't. It tells me to consider my plans for the day. I write little bullet points. Go to work. Be a servant at work. Go serve my father in his ailment. Go do whatever it is I have to do, sponsor my guys, be present when I'm sponsoring. And I just write little bullet points of what my day ahead looks like, right? And then I have the Insight Timer app, and for a while I listened to Om thing, and that got old. So for a while I listened to some Buddhist something or another, and that got old. My current thing is Tibetan meditation bowls. I found a 33-minute meditation that has these Tibetan meditation bowls, and I just hit start, and I sit and get quiet with my plans for the day, and I just go inward, and I search to tap into the power. And on days when I do that, I experience way less Matthew and more God. I can be a servant to my father that used to beat me as a child. And I can go to work and deal with people that in the normal world, if I didn't have this practice, I would want to throat punch. I can come home and love my wife regardless of any flaw that I think she may have. I can I can have an adult conversation with my wife yesterday about some scary financial stuff, and I can say, baby, this isn't directed at you, it's directed at us because we both been careless with money. I can be a husband, I can be a father, I can be a member of society, and I can show up here and I can share my experience with this stuff. But without that morning quiet time and without a nightly review, Matthew reemerges. And I'm sure that if I do that long enough, restless, irritable, and discontented will come back. And I'm sure if I stay there long enough, guys, I will pick up a drink because I'm a guy that can't stop drinking no matter what. And I tried everything. I even tried the first 9 steps and was suicidal. But it's when Harold says to me all the time, or says to people all the time, come all the way in and sit all the way down. Do what we do. And when I come all the way in and I sit all the way down, and I actually, the article that I read out of the language of the heart is called Take Step 11. When I actually take step 11, not as a checkbox on a chart that I have to fill out at the end of the day, right? But actually get quiet, right? And if I really look at it, it's sought through prayer and meditation, right? So my nightly review, can that become a meditative practice for me, right? Can I thoughtfully contemplate the day that I just had? Can I then afterwards get prayerful and ask God to show me what corrective measures I need to take for tomorrow? I'll tell you today in my step 10, my father had been in the hospital, came out of the hospital, went to a nursing home, ended up back in the hospital a couple weeks ago, and and today he got released from the hospital. And in the middle of the day, he called me, and I was at my office, and he said, "Can you be at the hospital at 1 o'clock?" I worked till 3 o'clock. My boss is just so super chill. I packed up my bag, I shut off my computer, and I walked out. He's like, "Where are you going?" I said, "Lunch." And he goes, "You don't eat lunch." And I said, "I'm going to get my dad." He goes, I know, you're good, man. Um, and I go to the hospital, and my dad said, "Be here at 1, they'll have me ready at 1." And I get there at 1 o'clock, and I got a busy day. I got 3 sponsee calls before this, and I gotta get quiet before the meeting. I gotta do some meditation. Um, and I get to the hospital and we wait 25 minutes for the person with the wheelchair to come up, right? And the person doesn't come, and my dad's getting antsy because I'm sure that I gave him the sense that I had a lot of stuff to do and I wasn't patient and I wasn't present for my father in that moment the way I needed to be as a son, right? Um, and I walk out into the hall and I get a little aide lady, and I said, "Hey, we've been waiting 25 minutes for this wheelchair. Can I just go downstairs and grab a wheelchair?" And she goes, "Well, we called. You're just going to have to wait." Real snarky. And I said, "I understand that, hon, but I got to get back to work. I really," and she said, "Well, it's too bad. I guess if you want to go, you can go and we'll just call your dad a taxi." And I wasn't very kind back. And I said, "No, you don't have to be bitchy. I'm just trying to get a chair for my dad." And I went back into the room and I sat and I didn't go make amends to the girl, but I already know tonight in my nightly inventory, I was driving home from there after I dropped my dad off at home, got him situated and got him a meal and got him his water and got him his medicine. And I was driving home and I thought, I have to go back to the Erie County Medical Center tomorrow and go to the 10th floor and make amends to this girl. And I already know it's going to be in my nightly inventory tonight because I can't let that stuff build up. And I wish I would have step tended in the moment and made that amends right then so I didn't have to spend an hour driving tomorrow to get back down there to make this amends. But I already know it's going to be there. And I don't have to do that. I get to do that. Because again, guys, when I do the simple actions that are part of step 11 that seem to be a nebulous, this out of reach thing for so many people in Alcoholics Anonymous. But when I really live into them, I get the freedom. And I guess I'm kind of excited to go there tomorrow and find this little miserable woman and bring some joy into her life. I hope. Maybe she's going to tell me to screw off. It doesn't really matter, right? Um, how much time do I have left, Ali?
You got 10 minutes, brother.
Okay. You know what, Harold, he when I first asked him to sponsor me, he said I have a few requirements. One of them is that I want you to be somewhere once a week where you don't want to end up. So I have this commitment that I got at this. It's called Horizon Village, and it's a house with about 80 guys in it. It's a facility, and I take a meeting in there every Monday night. I take a meeting in there, and there's a lot of guys that I see there that I've seen around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous over the past 12 years I've been around, that have been around here and gone back out. And I am such a believer in step 10 and 11 that I and this what I do with these guys has made me believe even deeper and deeper and pushed me even more into this surrender to um the discipline of steps 10, 11. Mark Houston, one of my favorite speakers, always says the strict disciplines of step 10 and 11. um and I think that that's what it has to become for a guy like me, right? And not discipline like punishment, right? Discipline like this continued learning and searching and yearning and teaching and perfecting, right? Uh, but so I go to this halfway house and it's a very open meeting. I don't have a structure to it. I go in, I usually bring one of the guys I sponsor or one of the other men I respect in Alcoholics Anonymous in the area, and I have them share for a half hour, and then I open it up for questions, and then I ask the guys questions. And one of the questions I always ask, especially when there's a new round of guys, hey, I've seen some of you guys around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous before. How many of you guys did some step work, and people raise their hand, and how many of you guys had a sponsor, and how many of you guys made some amends? And then I ask, when you relapsed, can you tell me those guys that had said, oh, I've done all 12 steps, right? Like it's a completed body of work. What was your active current step 10 and 11 life like? And how many guys were you sponsoring when you drank again? And guys, in the 7 years that I've been going to facilities and carrying a message, I've yet to have anybody tell me, my God, I woke up every morning and I sat in a meditation chair and I did quiet time and I asked God to enter my heart that day. And I went through the day and I continued to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And when I got home, I really sat down and I either put pen to paper or pulled out the app on my phone and I really truly did a nightly review. I've yet to have anybody tell me that. But the men and women, the people, if you will, in Alcoholics Anonymous that I love and respect, every single one of them that I talk to, that I rub elbows with, that I go to conferences with, that I spend my sponsorship weekend with, all of those men and women that I talk to that seem like spiritual giants to me, that have this, Bill Wilson said that Ebby had this look in his eye. There was something different. He was inwardly arranged, right? There's something different about their eyes. When Alice walks into the room, when I see Ali, when Teresa's in the room, I see something alive in them. And these are people that I know experientially because I believe that they're not lying to me when they talk to me about their step 10 and 11 practice. I know they do this thing as a way of life. And I know they have the freedom. And I know the people like Alice and Teresa and Harold and Steve Lee and all these guys that I get to walk behind, men and women, people that I get to walk behind. I know that they're just blazing the path for me and that it's my responsibility to not only do this work, but to come to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and share with all of my heart and all of my being the absolute necessity that I feel in my life. Bill Wilson refers to the 12 steps to Alcoholics Anonymous as vital in several different places in our book. I sponsor a bunch of nurses and they have to go into the rooms and take people's vitals, right? If they don't have vitals, they're dead. If me as a real alcoholic, as the guy on page 21, if I don't have step 10 and 11, then I'm as good as dead. Because I'll tell you what, all the blessings, thank you, Ali, all the blessings that I have in my life, the beautiful woman that I get to share this life with, the relationships that I have with my children, um the relationships I get to build in Alcoholics Anonymous, the men. I don't know why I'm inspired to share this story. One of my guys, he was part of this group called, I won't even say the name of the group. He was part of this group in Buffalo that doesn't believe in working the 12 steps. They're very cultish. You come in and you're on step 1 for the first year, and if your sponsor deems you worthy, you can start taking step 2. And this guy was 6 years sober when he came to me, absolutely crazy and just broken and just an untreated alcoholic, somehow staying sober one day at a time, miserable and angry. Um, and we start working the steps together. And then with a guy like that, I get them. I'm going to work 1 through 9 with you. But when you got 6 years dry and I see your life exploding around you, I'm getting you into step 11, 10 and 11 right away. Right. And so this guy, and we'll call him George. I don't sponsor anybody named George. George, starts doing the step work, does an inventory. We do step 5 together. I get him looking at amends right now, and he's already has a step 11 life where he's sending me his stuff and he's working with step 10. Yesterday, 2 days ago, he calls me up and says, "You'll never believe what happened." I'll tell you what, guys, when I hear that in Alcoholics Anonymous, I fasten my seatbelt because I know something good is coming, because I know God is real and I know God's going to drop heat on me, right? My son, who I haven't seen in 22 years, that I abandoned when I was 3 years old, friended me on Facebook. He said, "What do I do?" And I said, "You just send him a message. Thank you for the friend request." Because you don't know what he wants. So he did. And the kid goes, "I think you're my biological father." And they have a little back and forth. And the kid says, "Can we meet for dinner?" Now I'm telling you guys, I know that if Mike doesn't have an active step 10 and 11 life, fear is going to absolutely riddle him, and he's never even going to talk to me about reaching out to his son and what do I say on Facebook, right? It's just not happening because he's not watching for the fear. And no, I got 2 minutes, Ali. I'm good. I'm getting there. Um, so Mike goes and meets this young man for dinner, and Mike always told, I'm sorry, I said his name. Mike, you don't know his last name, whatever. Mike always told everybody, "Oh, my son grew up in the suburb of Buffalo, had 2 great parents." Well, he finds out his son was raised by a crack junkie mom and a father that was stepfather that was super abusive and had a horrible life, right? But met this girl that has lifted him up and encouraged him to reach out to his dad. And this is the kicker, guys. There's something in Buffalo called Shakespeare in the Park. Mike shoots me a text message today. He goes, "Hey, Thursday night, my son invited me to go to Shakespeare in the Park with him. Can I skip home group to go to Shakespeare in the Park with my son?" I said, "You better. You better." And I'm just telling you guys, I truly don't believe if Mike wasn't working step 10 and 11, Mike's not going to Shakespeare in the Park with this kid that he didn't know for 22 years. That's what step 10 and 11 give us, guys. So if you're stuck in Alcoholics Anonymous, if you're holding on to your seat and you're like, "I'm sober today, God darn it, and I'm going to be happy," guys, there's so much more. There's so much more. So get someone that's talking about step 10 and 11, come all the way in and sit all the way down and truly experience what all 12 steps have for you, because it's nothing short of a miracle. Thank you for asking me to be here, Alice. I hope I didn't let you down.
Debbie Alcoholic, really good to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you for your share, Matthew. I was really, really touched by it. You teared me up a couple of times. I do have one question. I'm curious, that sponsor, and I hope I got this right. If not, hopefully it's close enough. But that sponsor who, when you got to the 11 steps, said, "Oh gosh, I suck at prayer and meditation. You better go to something," and sent you away to find somebody else. How would you handle that today? If someone reached a step that you felt not very strong in, what would you do? Or what would you tell one of your guys to do? Maybe that's a better question, but either way.
And I hope this doesn't sound arrogant. I really do. I, I I'm a student of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love the big book. I had a guy one time say to me he couldn't stop. He kept relapsing and he came back to me and he said, "Yeah, but do my girlfriend and I have to be AA losers like you and your wife to get sober?" And you know what? Maybe. So I don't think I would come into a position where I would not have experience with a step. And if it was one of my guys, all my guys know that um if you get a question that you don't know, come to me. I had a situation the other day. One of my guys came to me with a piece of, he went and made amends and ran in. It was to an ex-girlfriend, and there were some feelings that arose and some inappropriate texts went back and forth. And I gave him what was on my gut, what was on my heart at the moment about what to do with his current girlfriend, and do I go make the amends or not. And I'm not going to share all that here, but I went to Harold with it and I said, "Hey, Harold, did I mislead him?" Because I like to check myself. Because is it Matthew that's giving the advice, or is it truly my spiritual centered self that's giving the advice? And my call with Harold is every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. So 12 hours and 46 minutes ago, I was talking to Harold about this, saying, "Hey, was I off center?" So I will, if I have no experience with a situation that someone comes to me with, I will defer to somebody else and I will encourage my guys, don't speak on something you have no experience with, right? But I had some experience with that, and I will always check with somebody else just to make sure that it's not Matthew making the decisions, that I'm really God centered on that. I hope that helps.
Thank you for the question, Debbie, and thank you for the answer, Matthew. Andrew, you are up next.
Covered alcoholic, Andrew. Thank you, FOTS team. Just thank you. And for those that came back from the world, I didn't get to see you. I was quite sick, so I canceled the flight. Matthew, and my grant sponsor in 2011 got me into this business of 10 and 11. Yeah, those dual inventories at the moment, at the time. You started out with, here's my question. So we let God discipline us in the simple way we've just outlined. And I think the writers who wrote that, Bill wrote that, I think they're thinking about the fact that my mind, it will be selfish, self-centered at any given moment. I'm in the transactional world, the third dimension here. And yet step 10 tells me that I've now entered another strange alien world. And I have to find space for both of them to cooperate. my actions, my thoughts have to be in two places at once, so to speak. So the guys that I have now helping me from BYOC got me back into the 10 and 11 daily at the moment. And now it's gone from just a check stuff to examples, you know. So I want to thank you for bringing up this vital stuff here. My question to you is, do you feel a nearness when you go through this step 10?
A nearness with step 10 or step 11? I mean, I just, and it's been probably more recent over the last 9 or 10 months. And I'm not sure exactly what shifted in my life. But I constantly find myself in awe of from a guy that came into Alcoholics Anonymous not even wanting to hear the word God, refused to write a capital G when I wrote the word God, didn't want anything to do with it, had to get sober believing in the Star Wars Force, to getting to where I am today, that I truly I was outside cleaning. Liz and I have this party. We have like 100 people here for the 4th of July every year, and from AA. And I was outside cleaning up, and I was in the backyard, and I was sweating my butt off, and I felt this breeze come across, and I just know. I have no doubt in my heart, in my soul, that God is there with me, that it's part of me. I do feel the nearness more often over the last night, and I don't know what it is. It's just been. I think it's this idea that uh, Bill Wilson talks about perfect and enlarge our spiritual life, right? I think we can aim for this perfection, and we can, not that I'm getting perfect, but I think it multiplies upon itself, that when I get deeper and closer with God, the deepness and closeness gets even exponentially deeper and closer, if that makes sense. So I just feel like I've turned inward and really sought this, and I feel when I made that decision and not beep the horn today, and that girl couldn't believe I didn't beep the horn, I felt God right there in that moment. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Kathleen, you are unmuted and you are up next.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Matthew, for your share. Um, we we let God discipline us. I have been sober a long time, and I have absolutely no discipline when it comes to the 10th step. I have developed some discipline with the 11th step, but I do so much better in the morning when I start my day. There is a communion, a closeness that happens, and I can share very intimately with my higher power. At the end of the day, I can say my thank yous and express my gratitude, but I need help with developing a discipline of doing step 10, because it either goes, oh, I was awful. I behaved badly. Why can't I do better? I would hate to see me walk into the room when I'm fuming. And so it's a lot of beat up myself, or it's like, well, that really wasn't so bad. I was tired. I'd been up and down the steps too many times. It's either justification or self-flagellation. And so I just stop. I close my eyes, or I look at the stars out my curtainless window and talk to my higher power. But I really haven't done step 10. So any methodology, I've tried the list and the checklist. I haven't learned that since I've been sober, how to do step 10. So any tips would be appreciated. I could use some advice, help.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Guys, I'm a big book thumper. That's all I got. And I truly believe, I think it's page 29. It says further on, clear cut directions are given to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered. Like I don't think does the big book encourage us to go other places, to read other spiritual literature, read other stuff? Absolutely. But if we're in kindergarten, right, and we're trying to learn, or for whatever, whenever you start learning the addition, right? What do we go to? We go to the textbook. We start there. We take the basic directions and it shows us how we figure out one apple and one apple is two apples, right? Like it just, so I'm just telling you, just start with the textbook. Start with the clear cut directions, get in there, find yourself a 10-step buddy, have a sponsor that's going to hold your feet to the fire and be accountable. Hey, I screwed up today. Can I share this with you? And start to and let someone else in your life have spiritual consent. If anybody doesn't know what spiritual consent is, a friend of mine, Jack Wheeler, shared this thing with me that his old sponsor had written up that he got from Mark Houston, I'm allowed to lovingly call you out on your inaction or your BS or whatever it is. And I'm doing it a disservice by trying to put words to it. But if anybody wants that, you take my number down and text me and I'll send you the little thing about the spiritual consent. But it's giving someone permission to speak truth into my life in a kind and loving way. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison, good to see you. Glad you're here. Come in.
Thank you, Alice. Hi, I'm Allison, alcoholic. Matthew, thank you so much for such a terrific, impactful share. I had a couple of quick questions. If you only had time for one, that's fine. But you made a comment saying that I can't live up to that. When you think about the people that come before you who impacted you deeply, how did you change? How did you work through the process of saying, I can't live up to that, and start taking actions to do something like you did today, which was fantastic? The other question is the step 10 and 11 relationship. I have that same experience of how important it is for those to work together. And so can you speak a little more to how the step 10 helps serve and enhance your step 11? Thank you.
Well, the first question, it's fear, right? It's self. It's reemergence of self in my head. It's me not watching the thinker. It's my ego, my pride, my brain getting a hold of something and trying to make me less than, right? Because the reality is, and again, I'm not trying to sound cocky. I know I can articulate the message of Alcoholics Anonymous in a rather well way, right? Like I can talk about this stuff because I have experience with it, right? But the imposter in my head, the ego of the self, wants to tell me that you're never going to be as good as Mark Houston or Chris. You're never going to. And you know what? The reality is I don't have to be as good as them. I just have to be as good as God wants me to be. But the imposter in my head will try to keep me down. So when I did the inventory last night and I put that fear in there, it's a real fear that I have. It's there and I have to address it. And I have to address it because I have to take it to God to let God help me see that it's just BS. Right? It's just my ego and pride. It's me slipping back into self. It's me not watching the thinker. I don't know if you guys know where that comes from, but Eckhart Tolle has this Power of Now book, and he says, watch the thinker, rise above your egoic self and really watch what's going on in your head, because that's not you. It's the spirit you that is really you. So that's where the I'm not good enough thing comes from, right? And I think we all suffer a little bit of that. And I'll tell you, that's definitely diminished over the years, because when I came in here, I had this list of fears that I'm never going to be a good father. I'm never going to be a good earner. I'm never going to be a good husband. I'm never going to be able to be faithful to a woman. I'm never going to be any of this stuff, right? Yet God's showing me that I'm all those things and more today, right? So I hope that answers that. And the second part about this working in concert together, we have a woman here in Buffalo, and she calls step 10 her purse, because she never goes anywhere without it, right? And so it's my step 10 is my cell phone. Like if I leave the house and drive halfway way down the street, I will turn around a mile and a half to come back and get my phone because I have to have it with me. And I just have to prepare myself that that's what step 10 is more important to be with me than my phone. Right. And so from the moment I break with God or break that, I don't say break with God because I truly believe that I'm trying to walk with God all day. But the moment I break out of that kind of step 11 bracket of my morning time, I need to flip right into step 10 because on my own power, with my own will and ego reemerging, I'm gonna get fearful and think I'm not good enough. I'm gonna beep the horn and want to get out of the car and rip somebody's throat out. I'm gonna say something crass at the office when she says, I don't mean to be a bitch, but well, you're gonna be, so why don't you just like I'll say something like that rather than get quiet, right? So I have to have step 10 with me. It has to be with me all day long. And then for whatever reason, I think that my step 11, knowing that I'm going to do step 11 at night and not wanting to write so much stuff really encourages me to make the amends in that moment in step 10 all day long because I don't want to have to put it on paper that I have to go make amends tomorrow at ECMC, the hospital, and live into that tomorrow. Because I just want to be present today, right? So I hope that makes sense how that kind of works together. And then again, step 11, right? I'm really, if we look at it, it's reviewing the 4-step questions, right? It's reviewing the 10-step questions in my step 11, but I have to be careful not to. I just had a guy today that was beating himself up about something that had happened. I said, whoa, I said, we're not slipping into morbid reflection or just beating ourselves up. Like, stop. You're a human being having a spiritual experience. Like, stop, put the friggin' stick down and stop beating yourself. And what can we do next to get closer to God? And so I think that that's just how it just tumbles together, if that makes sense.
Matthew, I love you. Thank you for saying yes to me when I call. Thank you for our friendship. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you all.